Okay, so today we're going to do a review of our MapKit. We're going to throw a map together again, but I'm also going to show you the second part of the project where we're going to show you how to do a second view controller and have that slide onto the screen for adding a location. And if we have time, I'll show you how to go about finding out the information about getting the user's GPS location. There's a couple ways of doing it, and everything has changed in Swift 3, so that's going to be iffy, and hopefully we can get through that because there's always seems to be syntax changes and other things like that. So we're going to start from scratch. I'm going to do a single view controller. I'm going to run through this really quickly, so hopefully if you got stuck at the beginning part, you can just look at this. I'm going to just call this maps, and everything is fine, Swift and Universal. I'm going to stick it right in that folder, no big deal. Let's give it a unique name. Apparently I have too many maps demos in there. Okay, so here's our project. Everything has gone well so far. Now I always like to start in my main storyboard and just start laying out the interface to show what this is going to look like, and then we're going to do the code that goes behind these view controllers. And so to start out, in the bottom right hand side here for our filter, I'm going to type in map. We're going to drag this onto the screen. We're going to resize it. Let me drag it to about there. We'll leave a little bit of space. So I'm going to add a button up here eventually. Okay, so we've added our map, and usually the first thing I like to do before I forget, which I usually do, is turn on our map capability. So go into capabilities, turn that on. That's all you have to do for that one. Go back into our main storyboard here, and for this one, the file that's behind this view controller, again, is our view controller, just generic view controller name. That corresponds to this Swift file here, so click on that. Now, this doesn't have any member variables. We want to reference to our MapKit, so if you remember before we do that, we import the MapKit module, and we're going to create a variable, and that's just going to be called map view, and that's going to be of type map view, or mk map view, excuse me. And let's see, and actually let me delete that, because the faster way is to go into the main storyboard, click on our assistant, control, click, and drag over to where that was, let it go, and now I want to do that. That's much. Now we have a reference to our MapKit. We can start manipulating our map this way, and if I compiled it, you can see that it runs that way, but we're going to assume it works for right now. We're going to go back into our storyboard view, click on map view, make sure it's selected by, you can see these little square resizer boxes here. Go over to our attributes, and we're going to set up our map to display something appropriate. I usually like the hybrid view, much nicer than just the regular kind of, I don't know what it's called, toon shading or something for the shading that happens there. So we're going to allow zooming, we're going to allow scrolling, the 3D view, the rotating, the buildings, the compass, all that fun things. We're also going to check user location on there, so we'll get to that in a second, but just those two options. So change the type, change the user location. For your project, your type can be whatever you want, doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we have our map set up, we're going to then go and download. We need to download the JSON file that has our map locations in it. And to do that, I'm going to switch over to my example here just to grab the URL. Oops. Okay, and so we have that JSON URL that we now need to download and parse and then put the pins on there. And so I'm going to open up a new browser window and just type that in, make sure that still works, and yes it does. Here's what our JSON looks like. I'm going to type in Alamo Fire, so I'm going to again do all this from scratch, so to show you how to install this properly. Go to the GitHub page, and scroll down until you see the installation instructions, and we're going to skip by all those nice manual or automatic ones. Let's skip down to the manual one. So we need to initialize a Git repository if we have not already done so. And then also we're going to add this as a submodule to our repository. So to do that, let's go to our Xcode project, because I'm going to show you a little shortcut. I want to get to the folder where these files are. And I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to say show in Finder. It can be almost any one of these files. And I'm going to close these other windows. Okay, and so here's the folder where all of our project files live in, and I'm just going to keep that. I'm actually going to go up a directory. So now that I'm in that directory, I'm going to open up a terminal window. And I'm going to start typing in cd for change directory space, and then I'm going to show you another trick, and maybe you don't know that. I'm going to click on this icon here for our maps demo, where our files are, and drag it into our terminal window and release. And now you can see that I'm changing the directory all the way to this subfolder, because it was kind of deep, and I'm lazy, I don't like to type. Hit enter, now I'm in that directory. If I do git status, it is not a Git repository, so let me set this up as a Git repository. And when I set up the project, I could have checked that box to set up the Git repository, but I didn't, so we'll do it this way. So I initialized it by git init, and then I'm going to paste that git submodule add, and then add this as a submodule to this one. And you'll see that, actually, let me control C that for a second. I want to go into this folder. Well, no, I think it'll work outside this folder. I think it just has to be in the same folder as the Xcode project. Let me paste that back in. We'll see. If not, I'll just delete it and start over again. It just has to be in a specific place. And I guess I could always move it if it's not perfect. Okay, so now Git has downloaded the Alamo Fire project. Let's go ahead and type in open space Alamo tab, enter. Now this has opened up the project folder for Alamo Fire. And if you remember from the last class and also in the instructions on the Git page, we click the Xcode project file, we drag this in anywhere almost here. I just like to put it at the top. Alright, so that's in there now. Now if we go back to the maps demo, we can scroll down the maps project property, go down to the embedded binaries, hit the plus button, and we have all these binaries in here. Select the iOS version of the framework, hit add, do that. Go back to our view controller where we're going to download that JSON file. We're just going to do it in the Viewdidload. So when the map view or this view controller loads, it'll then go ahead and download that JSON after it's done. But again, before we do that, we have to import the Alamo Fire. Okay, download that, and just checking. This is my backup. Just make sure I'm getting everything proper. Let's go ahead and build this real quick because it might not. That binary might not exist. Okay, yeah, that's what happened. So when I tried to add that framework, it hadn't been built yet, or didn't recognize that it was in the project. So I just hit Command B to build the project, and that got rid of that error about not having that module in existence. So again, it's sometimes not what you know, but how you solve the errors that Xcode throws at you, right? Because that error, that would have tripped me up back in the day, but I know why that happens now. Okay, so now that we have Alamo Fire, we can start using it. So Alamo Fire, and we're going to do a get on it. And all these are listed. If we go back to Chrome, all these examples are here. So actually, instead of get, it was request. The URL, the response JSON, we're going to use response string instead, and then we're going to use this kind of shortcut it's a block of code, but this is going to pass in as a member to that block of code. It's kind of a little wave, a hand waving, but you don't need to worry too much about it. Just copy the syntax that they have here and why these two words are just kind of floating in space there. That'll give you the response to that request, and then from there we can parse it. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So response, and as a string, I'm going to, oops, I guess I didn't type that in. Okay, so the JSON file, and that's going to pass back a response string and response in. That'll give us our code block for that. And let's see, what am I missing? Oh, sorry, not response request. And that's why autocomplete wasn't working. Okay, so we have that. Now in response, what we're going to do to get that data out of that response is we're going to set a string, so just going to call it JSON string equals response dot result dot value, and this could possibly be null, and we should check for it. But I'm going to go through this really quickly and do the exclamation point to unwrap it. And yeah, it's not been used. I know what that error is. Okay, so now that we have the JSON string, we can get a piece of data out of it to pass into our JSON. And this is, I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but we're just going to do it this way. So JSON data equals, and then we're going to use our string object, JSON string dot data, and then again, if you remember using that notation to encode the string into a data object using NTF8 or UTF-8, excuse me. So F8. So I did the dot because it knows that it's expecting a string dot encoding object, and by doing the dot, it's kind of a implicit method of saying string dot encoding, right? I don't have to type in string dot encoding. I just say dot because the compiler knows what type should go into that parameter, and so the shortcut is just to hit dot. And so you might see just dot, and then kind of as a reader, you have to figure out what class this belongs to, or this constant. It actually is a constant. Okay. So again, we're taking that JSON string, we're turning it into binary data using the UTF-8 character encoding. All right. So once we have that, now we can get a response out of this. So let's have an actual JSON. This is going to be an array, actually. So JSON array, and we're going to use. This is what I wanted to show you last class. Is if I start typing in ns JSON serialization, it's probably not going to come up. But let's pretend I'm from Swift 2, Swift 1. Yeah, so it's not. Let's see, hold on. Okay, it's not going to work, which is, I guess, okay. But if you're looking this up on Stack Overflow or somewhere like that, you'll see NS-JSON serialization. But I did see that there, since Swift 3 has kind of been out for a little while, at least people have been playing with it, they do have the JSON serialization without the NS. So a lot of the older API classes have that NS preceding it. So if you're running through your Stack Overflow answers, trying to figure out how to add something, and you see something like NS something, try removing the NS and see if that works. So that's what I wanted to show you. And Xcode sometimes picks that up, but for some reason it doesn't do that. So that's the beauty and the fun of learning Swift 3. Yeah, so we have that one, and then now I can get JSON object with data, JSON serialization, reading options. Now with Alamo Fire, if you guys can figure this out, instead of doing a response string, you can actually get back raw data, though it wasn't working for me, so your results may vary. You can try just getting the raw data and then passing that straight into the JSON serialization method here, but again, I couldn't get it to work. that was those like 3 hours I spent trying to do that. So what I'm doing is I'm getting it as a string, then converting it into data so that I can pass that data into the JSON serialization so it comes back as a object that I can work with. So JSON data, and the options here, JSON serialization reading options, that's actually what I want. JSON serialization dot reading options. And again, on your Stack Overflow answers, you might see this and just move on. Xcode's giving me an error, and the error is actually really cryptic. It's saying that you can't invoke JSON object with an argument list of type, and then etc., etc. And you're like, well, that's what Stack Overflow told me, that's what the documentation tells me. One of the things they changed is reading options is no longer a constant, it's a function or method, I don't know, and so you have to add the parentheses. That's, again, new in Swift. That was something that I couldn't figure out, and I dove down deep and I finally found it. And if we hit Command B, okay, so this is returning any object, I believe. And so any object can be any object. So we want to specifically say that this is going to be of type, and I do believe this is going to be an array, because if we go back to our JSON code, it starts off as an array and then has 3 objects in it. So let's just go ahead and typecast that. And I'm going to say as an array, and I'm not sure why Swift hasn't fixed this, but we actually have to do it as a NS array. There's also just a plain array object, but this only works with NS array. So if we do that, Xcode should complain. If I hit Command B, yep, there it goes. And it says any is not convertible to an NS array. Did you mean to use as exclamation point to force downcast? So this is something I wanted to show you. If I hit this little stop sign, and again, it'll come up with the fix it, and so that way you can know whether I need to use that exclamation point if you're not quite sure, if you haven't gotten that far in the book. But essentially this result that comes back could be null, and so you're using this exclamation point to essentially unwrap it as a NS array, and unwrapping it means that there is a wrapper to kind of protect that null value, to make it an object, not just 0, into an actual object that you can then check to see if it's null. It's just it's a type safety thing, and we'll slowly start to ease you into that concept as we go along with the semester. But okay, so let's see. So okay, apparently I haven't unwrapped my JSON data either. I'm not going to do it there. I'm actually just going to do it here, just so I make sure that when I do my assignment, I unwrap my objects. And again, I really need to check to make sure that these are not null, because if you go out to the internet and try to request this object, it might not be there, or the server might not respond, or you don't have internet. There's lots of reasons why that comes up, and AlmoFire does a great job of handling those errors. But again, I'm just kind of blowing over this, but you do have to check for errors. Okay, so let's see. No, I just have to use it. Okay, so finally, now that we have our JSON object, we can loop through every single object, and there's going to be 3 of them. And we can do that. We can get the index of it just in case we want it. We won't need it in this case. But then I want a JSON object out of that array. So there's 3 objects. I'm just going to call it JSON object. Or actually, let's call it current location, because these are locations. I'm going to name it something a little bit more specific. And I'm going to say I want those objects, I want those variables inside of the JSON array. And if you remember the change, well, not that you guys have much familiarity with Swift 2, but from Swift 2 to Swift 3, it used to just be enumerate. Swift 3 changes it to enumerated. Again, Stack Overflow is peppered with enumerate. This is now a past tense verb, which I think, if I'm speaking correctly, I think it mutates the variable that it has, but by mutating it, it doesn't actually change the value, it just changes the index that it's currently on. And so if I'm iterating or enumerating through this object, and I do that twice, and then somewhere down in my code later I do that again, I do believe it still picks up the next index. So if you stopped on like 2, it'll go to 3. I believe that's true. I'd have to check that to make sure. But there's your for loop, your fast for loop here. Oh, okay. So I forgot, but again, Xcode always reminds me that I forgot to put this in a try catch block, and the syntax that we do for this, because it throws an exception. So we put try right before the method that we're trying to call that throws the exception. So in this case, it's this highlighted part. Normally what you're probably used to in Java is putting it somewhere way at the top, and then anywhere in that code that throws an exception, it'll kind of catch it. And so in here, what we'll do is we'll do a do block. And let's just wrap this whole thing in a do block. I'm going to highlight the parts that I want to indent, and I'm going to hit Command right square bracket, and that'll indent it. So don't hit tab, because if you hit tab, it'll actually put a tab in like that. So yeah, don't do that. It's Command right angle bracket, and to de-tab it is left angle bracket holding down the Command key. So just a little quick shortcut when you're refactoring your code. And then we're going to have a catch block here, and I'm just going to print out error, something like that. Obviously, a better error message would be better. I don't have a whole lot of time, so let's run through this. Getting a couple warnings. Now I'm going to have every current object that we have here. And actually, what I want to do, I did want to call that JSON object. But I'm going to assign it to this object here that is a dictionary. And if you remember dictionaries, I think Java has them. Dictionary is a key value, well, I know Java has them, key value object. And so there's keys and they have values. In our case, those keys, again, key is name, value is, in this case, Bronco Stadium. And I'm going to pull that out of my JSON object, and let's see, so that one, and I'm going to say as a dictionary. So kind of a redundant piece of code, but I just wanted to be clear what I was doing. Let's see, it's going to give me, oh, okay, dictionary, and that's going to be a string and any type, oops, any object. Excuse me. Okay, yeah, that's where I paused right there. I was like, I think I need to use that exclamation point, but Xcode will let me know if I didn't, if I do need to, and I didn't put that in there. Okay, so what the heck does this line of code do? This line of code essentially just takes, and please get rid of your error messages here so I can read it. It takes your JSON object, which is of type any object, because it doesn't know what's in that array. It just knows that it has 3 objects in that array. It doesn't know what type they are. And so I know as a programmer what they are, and so I'm typecasting this down. You can do some pretty fancy things like check the type dynamically, and it's called runtime checking. And at runtime, it'll check the type, and then you can handle it accordingly. And I've seen some really cool code as switch statements that'll check to see if it's a string, if it's a dictionary, if it's another array, and handle that case in a switch statement accordingly. But again, I know that this is a dictionary objects, and the dictionary object, again, just to call that out explicitly, this is the JSON equivalent of a dictionary. So a bunch of key value pairs, key value, and this particular value just happens to be another object. That's why we put in any object rather than strings. Okay, if this line of code wasn't there, I could get away with just doing string in my generic, which is this guy. So here's the key and here's the value. Okay, so that's why we do that. Again, Swift is very strongly typed, so you have to pay attention to that. Okay, so current location. What I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to skip over the, well, I guess we have time. So let me build this out again from scratch. If you remember, we have to subclass the MK annotation to create our own annotations or our own pins in the map. So I'm going to hit File, add a new file, a new Swift file. You can also do it in the File menu, of course, however you prefer, or hit Command-N, which I sometimes do. And for this one, we're going to call it, I'm just going to call it map pin. Just make sure that gets saved in my maps demo project folder with the other Swift files, and it is indeed. Create that. Okay, so this starts us off as a foundation class, which isn't very useful for most of our cases with iOS. If you're doing like a terminal application, this is just fine. For this one, I am going to import the MapKit so that I can use the map annotations, and that's map annotations is of course included in the MapKit module. So to start off our new class, just type in class, let autocomplete do this for us, and again I have to name it the same name as our Swift file, so could just copy this if you have a longer name just so you don't mess up. Hit Control / to get to the superclass that we're going to inherit from, and I do believe this is just called MK map annotation, or let's just type in annotation, yeah, and let autocomplete handle that for us. I hold very little knowledge up in my head if you haven't noticed. I just let Xcode do as much as possible, which doesn't make me very smart. I know how to use the tool, right? So, code, what do we put here? Well, again, I don't really know, so let's hold down the Option key. Let's select this to bring up our documentation, and this works this time instead of last class.
Which key?
The Option key, and click on the class that you're interested in. So if you're interested in like MapKit, for example, it'll give up a little quick help here, and you can look at the entire framework and see what else is in MapKit, but I'm interested in the MK annotation. And you can also get that menu sometimes if you click on the question mark here, keep this window open or maybe even expand it a little bit. And as you go through it, like if I click on MapKit, that screen changes, and as I kind of go through my code, so map pin, it's not much information on map pin because I haven't added my own documentation. It'll say class, and that's basically all I have. You can use something like JavaDoc. It's not JavaDocs obviously, but there's an equivalent in Swift to mark up your code with self-documenting and comments that will then produce documentation, such as in this quick help, and that's what Apple's done with these. But I won't make you go into that right now. But it's there if you wanted to, write frameworks or you're working on some open source code. Okay, so here's the declaration for our MK map or MK annotation. Now we want to override these variables here. So we need the title, the subtitle, and a coordinate. Oops. And so there we go. So Control / get rid of the code. Oops. Why is that? Okay, just delete it manually. So we're going to create a variable called, the first one was coordinate, and MapKit knows what I'm talking about. So there we have title. So title, it's a string with a question mark, meaning it's optional. And subtitle here. And let's create, let's see, okay, what's the error? Okay, has no initializers, that's what I thought. So we do have to create our own initializer. And so that one is just init. So this is, again, our constructor, our initializer. And we're going to take parameters. Well, the first parameter, I'm going to actually want this, I just like my code organized. Okay, so init, we're going to take a first parameter as a title, and that's going to be of type string, comma. Our next one is going to be subtitle of type string. And the next parameter is coordinate of type CL location coordinate 2D, which is way at the bottom here. And now we just set up our class instance variables with those parameters that are getting passed in. So I'll do this really quickly. Self.title equals the title that's passed in. Enter. It was doing the autocomplete. Self.subtitle equals subtitle that's passed in. And then self.coordinate equals the coordinate that's passed in. Okay, so that's all we have to do for that subclass. And of course you can customize that all you want. And it does not, oh, okay, sorry, I forgot to, again, with these Xcode errors, it says MapKit does not conform to protocol NSObject protocol. Well, what that means is I just have to add in the NSObject here as a protocol, a little kind of comma-separated list of different things I want to inherit from, and use the NSObject protocol in there, and that's all we have to do. Okay, so try to figure out what it means when Xcode gives you an error, so that you know how to fix those. Okay, so now that we got our map, our pin, excuse me, now we can start using our pin. So we're going to create a map pin object. We're just going to say let map pin of type map pin equals a map pin, and as a constructor with this title, I'm just going to say the title for this one is going to be the current location. And actually, let me step back a little bit. I'm going to pull every value out of that JSON object, so I'm going to pull out the name first. So let me go ahead and do that into a string. So let the name string of type string equals current location. And then using the square angle brackets notation to pull out that name, let the description string, description string equals current location again. And what I like to do is copy and paste, not that description's hard to spell, but in case I make a mistake, Xcode, the compiler, will not pick up on that mistake because it's just a string, right? And so normally what I would actually do is take this out and say, like, somewhere up at top of my code, but I'll do it right here, make a constant. Because that's just better code practice, right? So that anytime I try to access that variable, I'm going to shorten this just because I'm lazy right now. Parameter. Don't do this at home. And then we have another one called location. You can call it key. Usually I call it key. I don't know why I call it parameter, but whatever. Okie dokie. And actually we have another one here. Latitude. Take the time to actually do this, guys, because it'll make your code so much cleaner and bug-free. And I'm not going to spell that out because I, again, like to copy that. I can spell, I promise. But just in case I make a mistake, which I often do, obviously, typing in stuff and trying to talk at the same time. Okay, so now that we have those parameters, I can then take that and put it in there. Description parameter, put it in there. Let's see what's it going to complain about. Oh, okay. So the return value on this is coming back, and it doesn't really quite know, but I am assigning it to a string, so Xcode says, do you want to typecast that to a string? I said, yes, please. So I'm just going to do that for this. Because the return value, it doesn't know what's in this object. It could be another object. So we're going to actually do that now. So let location, it's actually a dictionary, so I'm going to say dictionary, of type dictionary, equals current location, and then our location constant. And this is not a string, it is a dictionary, so this is going to return as a dictionary. And the reason it's a dictionary, again, is because location is another object of key value pairs. Okay, so we have that. And I get a bunch of, yeah, those aren't used yet, thank you. Okay, they're just not being used yet. We're getting there, Xcode. Okay, so now that I have that object, let me do something really quickly. So I guess I'm going to get rid of some of these. So it's asking me for a title. I'm going to use my name string as a title. So copy that, paste that in here. For the subtitle, I'm going to use the description string. Oops. And maybe you want to match that up better, but the names, call it subtitle instead of description string, but doesn't really matter for me. So for our location 2D coordinate, we actually have to create that. So I'm going to do CL location coordinate 2D make, and just make sure I'm selecting the right one. Yep, so it's going to ask for a double, which is the CL location degrees, 2 of those. And I'm going to pull that out because I hate putting constructors in here. So I'm going to say let the coordinate equal this guy. And for our latitude, I'm going to put in, let's see, so our location dictionary, we have, so as for latitude, I'm going to do location dictionary, and then inside of our location dictionary we have the latitude key, which is going to return this. I'm going to say this is as a double. Well, actually, I'm going to say, to be type safe, I'm going to say this as a CL location degrees object. And for the longitude, again, location dictionary. Oops, why isn't that? Alright, that's getting all messed up, so let me... Oh, I accidentally commented that out. That's why it's giving me errors. I was going to say, if the code complete doesn't work, you've messed something up. And I accidentally commented that line of code. Location dictionary, longitude, there we go. And we're going to say that, make sure it's not null. Of course, we'd have to check that, as a CL location degrees object. Okay, so it's kind of complicated, but what I've essentially done is I pulled out the name value, stuck that in a string, I pulled out the location, stuck that in another object, took that object, pulled out the latitude, the longitude, had another string that I pulled out the description. So now we have all these variables, and of course they're constants that correspond to those keys. So I have a name, a description, a location, and then I've taken those location, each of the latitude and longitude out of that location out and stuck it right into a coordinate, or a CL coordinate 2D object that I can then add here. So a little bit of work to get this. Okay, we have, if I've done everything correctly, cannot convert type dictionary. Oh, okay, yeah. Let's just get rid of that and say as dictionary string. And in this case, it should be a string. The values within the location should be both strings. The key and the value should be strings. So instead of doing string any object, I'm going to do string there. Okay, index is not used, that's okay. But if you did want to know the index of that location, like 0, 1, and 2, you can get that out of there. I'll just leave that in there for demonstration purposes. And what's it complaining about for this one? Cast string location dictionary. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. This is a double. If I can spell double. This is why we have compilers. Downcast to double. Yeah, let me pull this out real quick. So we have the longitude equals this guy. Sometimes when you bunch up a whole bunch of things like that, you can't figure out latitude, figure out what's actually causing the error. It could just be my syntax with Swift 3. So I want to put in the longitude first, the latitude second.
You got a swap, it looks like.
Thank you. Refactoring code. Cool, thanks. Okay, so yeah, latitude, latitude, longitude, longitude, latitude, longitude. Okay, I think that's right. And then here is the longitude. Make sure that's right. Okay, so this is coming, let's see, if I just actually put this as a double. Okay, I'm going to have to do something real quick here. So instead of this coming out as this is going to come out as a string. This is going to come out as a string. Because I know they're strings, or I know they're doubles. I was going to say, make them a string and then cast them to a double, but did you mean to use, let's see, let me check my, go to the backup, see what I'm missing here. Oh, okay, I did it the, okay, we can do that. Kind of do the crude method. And let me just copy and paste that code because we're running out of time. I'll explain here in a second. So okay, so I'm getting the current location, doing the coordinate 2D make. I'm taking this, which actually should be I name things differently. Here and here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to the location key using the question mark. Just ignore that syntax for right now, and the latitude. But write that down because it's important. It did take me a little while to get that syntax right. And it has something to do with the typecasting, but I didn't want to sit here and try to figure out how to do it the proper way, so you can just copy that down. So we're doing the key location, which returns an object, using the question mark for the kind of the optional unwrapping. Latitude, that'll get the value out, and then we're typecasting that as a CL location degree. So I tried to do that before in a nice clean manner, but this is the manner that works. And so we have a location object that we can just pass into the, oh wait, sorry, let me get rid of these and that. Now we have our location pin there. Let's pretend that works. Now we want to add a second. Once that gets filled up with the pins, like you saw with the last video, class, whatever it was, the view controller, we want another view controller that when we hit a button to add a location, it shows the second screen. Okay, so how do we do that? Let's go to our filters and just type in view, and at the top here will be view controller that we then drag in and it expands right here. We'll click and drag on that, and we're going to set this up really quickly. So I'm going to have a couple text fields in here. I'm going to drag this in right about here for the name of the pin, another one for the description of the pin, and then I'm going to have a button that I'm going to drag in. I'm just going to call this save location. Okay, that goes off the screen, which also reminds me I have to set up my auto sizing, so I'm going to drag to the right, do trailing space, drag up to this object to do vertical space between these two objects. Click and drag this one up, vertical space between these objects. You can see now that there's a little bit of line there. It's still red, so I have more to do. Vertical space, trailing space, trailing space. That gets rid of all those, and I need to do leading space here, trailing space there, and everything looks good. Now what I'm going to do, instead of putting labels up here, which I probably normally do, save a little bit of time, I'm going to put in a placeholder text. So for here it's going to be title. And for this one, it is going to be in the placeholder text, the description. Okay, and the save location is going to be enacted on. It's going to take those values out of that field, send them back to the MapKit to add that pin that we're going to create from here. Now, we have a little bit of setup to do for this because we want to create a new view controller class behind this. So let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to call it a details controller, so I'm going to just add a Swift file, and I'm going to call it details view controller. Always name your view controllers with the view controller ending on it, so details view controller. Just don't call it details because I don't know if it's a model object or it's a view. This way I know it's a view. Change foundation to UIKit, and we're going to do the class, and this is going to be called again details view controller. I don't know why it just doesn't fill that in for me. And its superclass is a UI view controller. And we're not going to set up our member variables because we have the storyboard to do that for us. So we have a title. We want an and sometimes it. So I hit the assistant, but it didn't show up with the correct view controller. This is the other view controller. So make sure this is selected, because what I did not do is set up the class for that view controller. It's just a normal generic UI view controller. So I have to set up the details. Just type that in, and you can see it pop up there. All right, so now when I go up to manual and change that to automatic, it's going to automatically show, well, let's see. Yeah.
I don't think it works.
Okay, if it doesn't work,
Right.
go to manual and find your details view controller manually. Eventually it'll work automatically. I don't know why it's doing that.
I think it's 7 words.
Yes, there's a lot of bugs in 8, so bear with us when we go through this. So this one I'm just going to call title text field, again naming your variable with the type. Wow, could not insert new outlet connection. Interesting.
I was getting that, and what I did was I just type again UIKit, then close the project, I open it again, and it worked.
Okay. Sometimes, yes, let's just go ahead and do that. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Close the project and restart it. And what did I call the project? Was it? Okay. I was going to say, I don't know why that one's on the top, but whenever I get funky things happening in Xcode, I do restart it. I don't have to do it often, but usually with new versions like this, I find that it's quite buggy. All right, yeah, because I'd never seen that error message before. So make sure that this view is selected, details view controller. Okay, great. Control click here and call this title text field. Yep, that's what happened. Just needed to restart it. So yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. And this one is going to be called description text field. Hit enter. So now we have references to this. What we didn't do, or what this didn't create for us, was the Viewdidload. So I have to do an override keyword func and Viewdidload, and hopefully it comes up. There it is. We can call the super Viewdidload here. Okay, so if we wanted to set up our text fields by putting anything in there, we actually don't need this method, but I like to have it in there to set up whatever it is I need to set up, mainly getting the user's current location, which we'll get to if we have time, or if not, I'll do it for Wednesday's class. We'll pick up from here. But I wanted to show you everything because I know a few of you were stumbling at some points in here, and I know I'm going fast, but what I also want is when I click on the Save Location button, I want to grab the text from the title and the description, create a pin from that, and then pass it back to the map view. We don't have anything set up to do that yet, but we'll go through this. So save location, click and drag, and I'm going to drag this in below here. And it's going to create not an IB outlet, so make sure that this is action, because it's going to create an action when we tap on that button. And I'm going to just call it save location. You can call it whatever you want. Touch up inside, so that when the touch releases from that button on the inside of that button, not outside, it sets off this. Let me close some of this stuff here. It sets off this this method here. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a string called title. Make sure this is a string, and set this equal to the title text field, which is here. And not just the title text field, but the value of that text inside it. So we have to do .text on that, and I do believe we have to use the exclamation point. Let the description, I'm going to do string. This is, I do believe it's called Hungarian notation, where you put the type at the end of it. And the description text field. Okay, dot text. Okay, so now whatever's in those text fields should be in our string variables here, and I'm going to create a map pin, and let's let that map pin be there. I typed the class in first because I'm used to other languages, but there, and then we're going to create a map pin, oops, constructor, and so for the title we have title, substring, or subtitle, excuse me, we have the description string is what I called it. And then the coordinate, we don't have this yet, and if we have time I'll do it, but for right now I'm just going to put in CL location coordinate, oh sorry, location coordinate, can't even see what I'm typing. Oh yeah, CL location.
Oh, you need to import MapKit first.
Thank you. Import MapKit first. Yes. Again, if autocomplete doesn't work, something's wrong. And for this, I'm just going to type in 00 for now, which puts us in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of one of the countries of Africa. But we'll just do this for right now because we don't have the user's current location yet. Okay, so we've created our map pin. Hopefully it's been populated with the values that are in our text field. But how do we pass that back to the map, to the original map here? Well, we haven't actually made a connection to these views yet, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do that by going back here, opening up our side menu here, typing in button, because I'm going to add a button to do this, and I'm going to put it up here. And I'm going to call this add location. Okay, I'm going to drag this, kind of make some space, drag up to the vertical, drag over to the trailing edge, and that's about it. Hit save. Now what I want to do is I want to link this button to that second view controller, and so just like everything else in Xcode and Interface Builder, control drag from the button to the view controller window and make sure that that little pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner says Details View Controller. That way you know it's selected. Usually can't go wrong, but here you get a little nice context menu that pops up, and we want to show this view controller when that button is pressed. Okay, don't use any of these are deprecated, so we have to do in the past. Now you see a little arrow going to that window. So you can set up really complex interactions all in storyboards, and this is why it's called storyboards if you didn't get that already, is you can now see in a nice view, if you had multiple views on in your app all throughout here, of all the different ones. So for instance, if we had another view controller, you'd see the arrows for the particular button. When I select this is called a segue. When I tap on the segue, you can see that this segue is hooked up to that button and obviously goes to this view controller. Okay, so what does this look like? Let me go ahead and run this. And of course, I was going to say it fails. Okay, so the title was just supposed to be title. Yep, thank you. Hopefully that's the only error. Oh wait, hold on. Title string. Yeah. Okay, so it's running it somewhere. Here's my simulator. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Oh, of course it has to. Oh, because I added the 7 plus. Let's see if we have another device. Stop that. We'll save you 10 seconds. Or maybe not. Oh, it's got to install there too. Why? What? I don't remember what simulator I was running. Maybe Maybe just the 6. This is all new as of like last week. Alright, so here's the 6S regular. This one actually fits on my screen, that's probably why. Okay, while that's loading up, let me just go back and talk about, really? It's always good to test on your devices, so you don't have to worry about the simulators. Okay, so again, what we're doing is we're clicking on the button. It's going to add a new view. That view we're going to type into those text fields. We're going to hit that save button, and that save button's going, what it's going to do now is just create that pin. It's actually not going to do anything. And so if we hit the add location, oh, you know what I forgot to do? This is why I usually test as you go. So with our view controller, once we have that map pin, I forgot to actually add it to the map view. And I have to do self map view first, self.map view. Add annotation here, map pin there. Okay, so that's why the map pins weren't working. Okay, there's our pins. I didn't do the zoom into view. I showed that last time. You can just double click on those, see that they're there. Okay, but what I want to do is, oops, wrong way. We're going to go here, add location. You can see that our view controller, our second view controller, details view controller popped up. If we click in here, a keyboard pops up, or I can use the keyboard on my computer. So I'm going to type in new pin here, and I can even hit the tab, though obviously that doesn't work on iOS, but for testing it works. Description here, save location, and it created a new map pin, but it did it in memory, and then Xcode got rid of it, or the compiler, or the app got rid of it. So how do we pass that back? Okay, so first of all, when I hit location, save location, what I want to do is dismiss that view. So we're going to do self dismiss, because we're going to dismiss ourselves in this save location method. So just hit enter. Do we want this animated? Do we want it to slide up and down, or do we want it just to disappear? We want it to slide up and down, so hit true here. And then for our completion block, once that animation is done, you can have this callback to maybe clean up any code or maybe display something on the screen. And so it's a completion handler that gets called again when that animation is done. We don't want to handle this right now, so I'm just going to type in nil, which is the same as null in Java and other languages. But we want to actually add a pin to the map, but we have to get a reference to it. So this is kind of the quick and dirty way of doing it. And in Project 2, after we talk about application architecture, I'll show you the better way of doing this. But in the meantime, we already have MapKit imported. I'm going to do var map view, and this is going to be of type map view, MK map view. Here it doesn't have an initializer, so I'm actually going to set this to optional here. And let's see, it's still, I think it's still going to complain. Okay, no, that's fine. This is, once I declare this, it creates its own getters and setters. So once I go back to the view controller, how do I actually set the, before I create, so I'm going to create, let's go to the main storyboard. I'm going to create this view controller, and then I want to pass the instance, the reference of this instance map view to this so that this view can add the pin so that it displays here. And again, this is not the proper way of doing it, but this is the quick and dirty way of doing it. And I'll show you that on Wednesday. But so we have this getter and setter. We have when I click on this magical button, let's go back to our main thing here. When I click on this magical button where we didn't have to write any code to get this view controller, that's really great if you want to just kind of prototype out an application and run through the interface. But since we wanted to actually do something, i.e. pass data into the secondary view, we have to handle that. And the way that we handle this is if you just type in Segue, which is actually spelled S-I-G-U-E, you can get all the different Segue methods, and the one is prepare for Segue. So the button's pressed, you want to do a little bit of preparation before that second view controller is put in there. Let's go ahead and select this one. What we're going to do is we're going to get an instance of that details view controller. So let the details view controller equal, and the way we get that instance is through the Segue itself. So this parameter that gets passed in here. So if we do Segue dot, and I believe it's destination, yep, and we're going to typecast that as a details view controller. So now that we have a reference to that, I'm going to ignore that for right now. We set details view controller dot map view equal to our map view. So self, just to be clear, map view here. Build that, and let's see, instruments we can have used. Let's see, details view controller. Might have to pick this up on Wednesday because we're running out of time. Let's see, instance member. Yes, thank you. I did that when I was preparing for this class too, because I did the autocomplete, and the first one is the class, not the. I like to name my instances sometimes lowercase versions of my class variables, which sometimes gets me in trouble. Thank you. Okay, so anyway, we didn't add that pin yet. So, okay, so now I have a reference to that map, everything compiled fine. Now if I go into my details view controller, before I dismiss it, or after, doesn't matter, I want to say map view add annotation. Okay, and we have that annotation already declared as a map pin variable. Save that. Let's see, what's it going to say? Oh, wait. Oh, okay. So we have to make sure that it's not null. So yeah, you'd want to check to make sure that the previous view controller set that. Let's just go ahead, Xcode. What are you doing, Xcode? Okay, sorry. I forgot. Yeah, because usually you don't want to do it this way, but if you are passing in and the variable is optional using that question mark, that you have to make sure that, again, you make sure it's null. So here's our title, so I'm just going to type in a bunch of text. Here, save. I'm going to put a breakpoint in here so that we can see what's going on. So save. Title string. I'm going to step over that and expand this. So you can see our title string is indeed equal to the garbage that I typed in. The description is equal to all those T's that I typed in. Stepping over the map pin. The map pin now is populated with an object. It's not null. So that when we add it to the map, it should go in at 0, 0, because again, that's what we put in for the coordinate. And I'm going to hit the play button. Just go back to our map here. And scroll over, and let's see. That did not seem to work. However, I will get it to work on Wednesday. But that's how you add a second view controller with buttons and dismiss it when you save the pin. So that should set you up pretty well for project 2. Again, we'll talk about user location. You can get that from the map view. Map view, what would we say, was self maybe? Or, yeah, user location. So this will give you a MK user location, which inside of it has a coordinate 2D object in here. So that's where I'll stop for today. I'm going to start kind of just hacking on this, so if you guys want to just stay and see how I do it, then you can, but you're free to leave. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, I had trouble keeping up.
Yeah, same here. You lost me when you were downloading Element Fire, so.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why I recorded it. It's fast. I will post it. Usually what happens is the live stream will go live, and then after it's done, it'll be a link. So if you miss class, just email me, but I'll post this one.
So like it's like when you're at home, you can like pause and like go back. Like that pace is like perfect.
Yep.
It is a little harder when you have to like try to. There's no pause button essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not the way that I usually do this. We don't want to pass references back and forth between classes, but I was just trying to experiment and show you the quick and dirty ways so we could wrap up. But I'll finish this up and see you guys on Wednesday.